Hello, good morning. I'm Hayley Nicholson, owner and event content specialist at Nuff Said, and really delighted to be presenting today on this webinar, on-site content delivery for conferences. Just to say, this is actually a re-recording of this morning's webinar, as unfortunately the recording didn't take. So technical difficulties, but we are back again. So as I said, I'm Hayley. I started Nuff Said in November 2023, and I have been working in events now for about 7 or 8 years. I thoroughly love this industry and I love working in event content, being able to put on great education programs, work with incredible speakers and deliver a really fantastic education program. It's just such a fantastic job, and I'm really delighted to just be able to share a few of my secrets. I've been really honoured to be recognised by the industry in a couple of different Next Gen and Rising Star accolades, but most importantly, I was really overwhelmed when Nuff Said won Startup Agency of the Year last year at the CN Agency Awards. So a little bit about me. I've worked on a huge variety of events. So here's a couple of some of my favourite photos from over the years. So first of all, in the top left there is me with a stage host and AV tech for the Home Life and You show, also known as Clean and Tidy. I've been working on the show since its inception, running their demo stage, and it's just great to come back every year and be working with the same people. In the middle there is one of my favourite keynote speakers I've ever worked with, which was the King's Bodyguard. It's one of his first speaking engagements as well, and it was just such a privilege to be able to hear about this man's life and how he got into one of the most, coveted protection roles in the UK. The top right there is actually my last day of in-house whilst I was at Incisive Media, and my last day with them was actually running Cover Summit. So as soon as that last speaker left the stage, I was like, see you later, guys. But it was, it was a really great event and such a high to end my in-house career on. Down in the bottom left there is actually one of the biggest events that I've ever worked on, which was AWS Summit London. I'm there with my content lead and one of my graphics ops, and we I think we had over 30 theatres, and there was so many speakers, but it was just such a step above in some of the conferences and events that I've worked on. In the middle there is actually one of my latest events that I've worked on, which was the Finance and Accounting Bookkeeping show at the NEC in Birmingham. And you can see me there with my high vis and my branding, and I felt very cool. So I just wanted to put that on. And then in the bottom right is actually myself and my co-host Jenny. We have a podcast called Speak Easy, which is all about conference production and event content. And if you haven't tuned in, you can find us on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And I really recommend it if you're looking to just get a little bit more information about how to deliver great programs, work with speakers, and some tips and tricks that we've learned over the years. So let's get started. So we all know the production process for a lot of us as conference producers, starting with research, working into agenda writing, moving on to getting our speakers, and then the prep phase. And all of that accumulates into on-site delivery. Now, you could be spending anywhere from a month to 6 months to a whole year working on one event. And then it all of those, hours, weeks, months, calls, agendas, documents, everything, it all comes down to how you do on site. And that's a lot of pressure. And there's a lot of things that can happen once you get on site, but there's great ways to safeguard your program, safeguard your experience, and make sure you deliver really, really well. So first of all, ask yourself, is any of the following happening at your events? Are your speakers arriving not really sure what's going on and feeling a bit confused? Are your AV teams missing some of their key cues? Is your content not appearing correctly on screen, or do you not even have the right files? Are your panels running over time, and does everything just feel chaotic and it's really taking away from that delegate experience? So if that's the case, then really you need to start asking the right questions. So first of all, who can answer the question if people are confused? And that's on both sides. First of all, if things are feeling chaotic or if your speakers are arriving confused, who can tell you what is right? And then is everybody being correctly briefed? If your AV teams are missing the key cues, then what's missing from your run of show? What information have you not provided to them? You've been working on this for months. They've shown up on the day and said, what are we doing? If your slides aren't appearing correctly, you need to really look at how you're managing your content process, how you're receiving files, how you're storing them, how you're managing, how you're labeling them. And if things are running over time, then have you got the right resourcing for your event? Are your stages appropriately staffed? And all in all, ask yourself constantly, are you delivering a high quality experience? So what I want to start with is our on-site Bible. So this is a big one. AV are absolutely critical to how your content is delivered on site. AV aren't just really like a technical team, they're also your delivery partners. So they're the ones that are controlling what the audience sees, what they hear, and then when things happen. So if they don't fully understand the session, then they're just going to be reacting instead of delivering it with you. And the biggest mistake that I see is that AV are given an agenda and maybe a couple of slide decks and just a very high level, top level brief. And what they really need is context. So here's an example of some, things that can be provided. And I am a mistake of this in my early years. Like I would just provide an agenda and go, this is the title, here's the description, which is irrelevant to them. And then also here are the speakers. But there's nothing about what's actually happening in that session. So what I'm going to do quickly is just remove this one. And then I'm going to share an example run of show that I love to use in terms of as a structure. So this is typically, let's add this onto stage. There we go. So this is an example run of show that I love to use. First of all, Excel. It's just nice and easy. In terms of the format that I use, I have all of these different columns, and this is where all the information is going to go. So first of all, your session. Is it session 1, 2, 3? And I'll go a bit more into this. Next is time. Then what is happening in this particular moment? And so this is the description of the session in terms of like what's happening at that particular minute. Then you've got what's on your screen. So what are they visually going to see? Then what are they going to hear? What's happening with sound? And then finally, furniture. There's one more field that you can add into this, and that is lighting. But I'm going to be honest, lighting is not my specialty, and I usually end up deferring to AV on helping with this one. And that's just an experience thing, but all of this is experience. So let's break this down a little bit further. So I've created an event here, and Taylor Swift is headlining as our keynote. I mean, amazing. But before we do that, before Taylor takes the stage, we need to introduce her. And that can be something that really needs to come into the timing. So how long are you allowing for that welcome to the event? I like to do my welcome as session 0, because when you're thinking about the procession of your day, you're starting from that keynote as session 1. So when your MC comes on, when your host comes on, call that session 0 and get that into your run of show. Here we can see that on time, this is actually broken down by the minute. And that may seem really pinicky to some, but honestly, you need to make sure that your techs know exactly when they need to come in with changing sound, audio, what's happening on screen. So we can see here that the first thing is that we're going to have is the voice of God. The VOG is going to go, please welcome to the stage, your host. We know that on the main screen is going to be the event holding slide, and what sound is going to be happening is the VOG. Straight away that's happening is the MC walk on. That holding slide is still going to be on stage, but we know that the sound that is now changed to is our MC walk on. Then our MC is going to start speaking. They're going to do their welcome. A lot of people like to also include the scripts in at this point. I don't have that here. So the AVs are going to be listening in. We've still got our holding slide on stage, but now our sound is coming from mic headset 1. Towards our welcome, and they'll will have done this in rehearsal, but we do have a video. So what's happening next is our file, event welcome. Now, this could be different whether you're using a master deck that has everything embedded, but additionally, your video content needs to be in separate files in case it fails, and we can carry on and get that back on stage. And our audio at this point is our video audio. After that, we go to our MC welcome close, so we know that we are back to headset. And once they're closing, we are straight into our next session. So as you can see here with session 1, first of all, what I like to do is we've got session 1 here. Everything in this is encompassing is relevant to this session. Next, we have exactly how long this session is going on for. So we've only got 40 minutes to tailor, but then we're going to go into everything broken down as to what is happening. We can see that this is our speaker, and that's just to confirm when your room manager comes and greets your speakers and make sure we've got everyone that's on. What's happening on screen is we've got PowerPoints. We actually don't have anything else that's going on screen. Here you could add in that there's video content, that there's more things to be happening, but really it's just PowerPoint slides. At this point, we know we need one headset microphone, but actually, and this is my mistake, we have got a handheld here. So what you can do here is just, you've got your one headset microphone, and then we got 1 times handheld. Finally, on furniture, Taylor's going to walk around. She doesn't need a seat, so we don't have any furniture on stage. So we've gone from our MC's close at 10:59 to going straight into 11, at 11, welcoming on our keynote speaker. So the voice of God is going to go, please welcome to the stage. We've got our holding slide on, and then it's our voice of God on sound. Then we're going into an intro video, and that should be right here is our file. So look at how you've done it here as well. Make sure that there is consistency. So file, keynote speaker intro, walk on. So that video is on screen, but the sound is also coming on that. You can see how I filed it there. We'll come on to filing afterwards. Then the speaker's going to walk on. There's a title card on screen, and we also have walk on music. Then she's going into a presentation. This is the file. At 11 o'clock on our main stage, we have session 1. And from the sound, we've got her headset. And then we go into all of these different sections. You can see here that we actually have an embedded video into the presentation. So that means we're not looking to move it into a full screen. It might be something that's embedded with the content, but we keep that slide on place. We're going to be having an audience giveaway. So we have microphones, headsets, and handhelds. So this is something that's really key to make sure audio and managing those levels. And then also around the audience engagement that's happening, there'll be cheers, clapping, I'm sure. We carry on. We then got Q&A, so we're back again with those handhelds. And then we go to the resetting for the next session. So I hope that makes clear about what you should be including in Run a Show and how you can really break that down to make sure that that delivery is great. So if I go back to our main presentation. Wonderful. So when it comes to working with AV, before we get started, there are 2 things. First of all, what do you need to know from AV? And then what does AV need to know from you? So first of all, ask AV, technology on your theatres. What do you have? What types of computers? Is it Mac or Windows? That's going to really depend on the type of PowerPoint files that you have. If everything you're receiving is Windows based and then suddenly you put it onto a Mac, there may be some formatting issues, and you need to allocate time into your on-site schedule to make sure that you can check every single slide deck once it lands at your AV desk. Also ask, what mics do you have? So the lectern, handheld, lapel, headset. Different speakers have different preferences. Some people really like to use a handheld and they don't like the feeling of maybe a lapel and holding a mic pack, or they have a preference for having a Britney moment and using a headset. Also, comfort monitors. Make sure that you have comfort monitors. It's an expectation, but many people aren't using them, especially on exhibitions where you have multiple theatres. So confirm whether you do and communicate that to your speakers. Next, stage setup. What do your stages look like? Even if you can get a example or a CAD, it's great to have that to share with your speakers and makes them feel involved in the prep to the event. Next, do we have plug and play for demos? Are you speakers able to bring their own laptop, plug it in, and effectively, show off maybe their technology, say it's a sponsor? These are really key, because if you don't have it, we need to make sure that we've got the facilities to allow that, especially if it's part of a sponsor package. Next, music. What's happening in between sessions if you've got breaks? Are you playing music in your rooms and theatres? Do we have a license? Just because no one's on stage doesn't mean that the vibes aren't still happening in the room. Next, check on resourcing. How many AV techs do you have per theatre? If you've just got a sound and a visuals, a graphics ops, then do you have anyone that's going to be able to help move furniture? Do you have anyone that's going to be able to help when you maybe need to run out of the room? So ask those questions. And then what do AV teams actually need to know? So first of all, what kind of session is it? How is it structured? When are things happening? And what are the key moments? So for example, if you've got a keynote with a video halfway through, that shouldn't be a surprise to them in the moment. If you've got a panel with an audience Q&A, they need to know when mics are going live. If there's a demo, they need to know when they're switching screens and what they're switching to. And all of that should be mapped out clearly. And this is where your run of show becomes really important, because that's your shared language with AV, and it's what connects content and production. So it tells them that this is what's happening, this is when it's happening, and this is what you need to do. And without that level of detail, you end up with things like slides coming up too early, videos not playing right, and awkward pauses, or just general confusion on stage. And none of that is good, because it's all about the delegate experience, and those tiny little details deliver a great show. So the shift here is really simple. Don't brief AV on the tech, brief them on the overall experience, because when they understand the flow of the session, everything becomes smoother for you, for the speakers, and for the audience. So I want to talk about slide filing, because this is where things can quickly descend into chaos. I'm sure everyone has experienced this. You know, you open a folder, you're greeted with final underscore version 2, final underscore use this one, updated underscore final copy. I want to use this one. And then somehow none of them are actually the final version. We just have no idea which one to use. My personal favorite is use this one. Great, thanks, super helpful. And the problem is that this isn't just messy, it actually creates real risk on site. For example, let's say this is one of your sponsors and you've had several editions of a slide deck. You've got seconds to load the right deck. Speakers are walking on stage, AV are looking at you, and you're trying to work out which version is correct. And that's how the wrong slides get shown, and how speakers lose confidence in you, and how you can ruin relationships with potential partners. So this is one of those small things that actually makes a really huge difference. I have a really consistent filing system that I like to use for slides. So it's something like this: speaker name, event date, final, no version 3, no use this one. What you can do here is, first of all, arrange your folders by stage and theatre and assign abbreviations to that. For example, main stage could become MAST, data and tech can become DATE, demo stage can just be demo. Make it simple and obvious to you. Now, when you come to labeling your files, label them with a standard format. So I like to start with the time, because when you do that, everything, when it comes to filing it, goes in order. And also use military time, don't use AMs and PMs. So do time, your stage abbreviation, and then your session number. And that comes back to the run of show, because if the MC opening was session 1, then that's going to be incorrect looking at the filing of your presentations. So 10 o'clock, main stage, session 2, 14:20, demo, session 6. In your filing system, that is going to label up really, really nicely. And then do you need to update a file? Add updated initials and date onto the end of it. And the reason that I say that is because when you're, once you're on site, if you've got a couple of days beforehand and you do have some updates, or when you're on site, and you need to check things afterwards, you can update that file. But that original file, don't delete it, add it to an archive folder, because you never know if you're going to need to call that one back. You may come to opening this one and there could be a formatting issue, and if you don't have time to fix it, you revert to the original. So let's talk about your on-site content team, because delivering content it's not one person's job, and it really is a team effort. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is assuming that someone will cover it. But when roles aren't clearly defined, things start to slip. Speakers don't know who to go to, AV aren't sure who's calling cues, and sessions drift off time. So having the right roles in place makes a huge difference. And at the center of it, you've got your content or programming lead. They're responsible for the integrity of the program, making sure sessions run as intended, speakers are supported, and everything stays on track. They are managing the whole team, but also being present to see what is happening as the show is going on. Then you've got your stage or your room managers. They're the ones that are going to be in the room, keeping time, managing transitions, briefing speakers just before they go on, and making sure that each session runs smoothly in the room. Next, I want to call out a graphics operator because they are just an absolute king behind the scenes. First of all, they control everything that's going on the screens, and they silently save the day when slides change last minute. They're really under pressure once we're on site, and they do deal with last minute changes, but having somebody dedicated to overseeing updates when it comes to slide decks takes a lot of pressure off producers. Next, I want to look at our speaker liaisons. They are your meet and greet team, people that are going to be looking after your speakers, making sure they're in the right place at the right time and that they feel prepared and confident before going on stage. I know what you're thinking, well, is that not what the stage room manager does? No, stage room manager needs to stay in the room. They're not effective if they're having to leave and go and find speakers and speak to them, chase slides, make sure they've got everything they need, check on any requirements. Your speaker liaison, especially when your events get bigger and bigger, can be that person to be almost like a PA and go and make sure that they've got everything that they need. Other roles that I want to shout out here is, first of all, your show caller. So I think especially for your main stage, they are going to call the show in real time. So that run of show that you've made, they're going to be able to work with your AV and your room managers to make sure that everything is running seamlessly. And finally, one other role that I love to have is a runner. Just moves everywhere and everyone, and they get to where they need to be quickly, calmly, and definitely speedy. But there's lots of things happening, especially when you've got multiple theatres, and sometimes just an extra set of hands to go around every room and say, are you good? Do you need anything? Can I get you anything? That's a really great asset to have once you're on site. So let's talk about speaker ready rooms or speaker lounges. They're a really great way to enhance your lounge, your speaker experience, and provide your speakers with a space that just makes them feel special. This space is where your speakers can arrive, prepare, and just get in the right headspace before they get on stage. And if that experience feels chaotic, rushed, or unclear, it just really shows how they deliver. So a good speaker ready room should feel calm, organized, and intentional. Speakers should know exactly where to go when they arrive. That should really be in their briefing and their reminder emails before they head on site. They should be greeted by somebody from the team, and they should have a real clear sense of what's happening and when. There's a really great feature that you can include in your speaker ready room, which is a slide preview. So you could have a graphics operator based here in the speaker lounge, and they can then get to review their slides before it's sent to their theatre. That way they can just check that everything's working, videos, any transitions, and then make any small changes whilst having someone dedicated there overseeing that. And also, because the worst time to discover a formatting issue is when you're already on stage. So it's a great way to just get them to sign off and say, yes, I am happy with this. When they're in the lounge, you can remind them of timing, explain how things like maybe a Q&A will work, and let them know what that stage setup looks like. And honestly, it's just a great chance to give them a bit of reassurance, and also to see them face to face. You'll have been chatting over video calls or emails, and it's nice to be able to, shake a hand and say, it's great to meet you. And it's just the point where they get to feel taken care of. So let's talk about rehearsals and familiarization. So these are two separate things. Rehearsals are the point where you can get a speaker on stage and they can run through their slides. Now, that means being mic'd up, getting to rehearse their intros. Maybe you give them the time to do their full presentation or just a small section. Now, that will make them feel confident and prepared before going live, but we can't do this for everybody unless you're going to dedicate a lot of extra time in your venue to allow this. So the other thing that you can do is what's called familiarization. So that's where they can walk through the space, see the theatre, go up onto the stage, look at the comfort monitor, get an idea of what the overall space looks like, and see their slides on screen. But they're not mic'd. They could have a quick click through, but they're not going to rehearse what that looks like. And then also just get to introduce them to the room managers, discuss how they want to manage any engagement, how they're coordinating their panel, and if there's going to be Q&A, again, what does that look like? So I made this lovely little flow chart about what you can do for your speaker ready room as well, and also this kind of aspect with familiarizations is how you could utilize a graphics op to help with familiarizations and seeing their slides once they're on stage, once they're on site. So let's say you've got your reception, speaker arrives and is greeted by their reception staff. Do they have a familiarization booked? So if yes, they can go straight to the graphics ops for a slide review and make sure that everything looks good. Then if they don't, you can take their details, maybe add them to a walking queue, and then they can go and wait in the speaker lounge or go onto the event floor until it's time for them to check in and do their review. Once they have, and they've also gone to the graphics ops for their slide review, fantastic. Now your speakers have said, yes, my slides look great. Yes, I am happy. I am ready to go. That is also the point that graphics ops can flag any major changes with the content lead and just make sure that that is approved to be on stage. Once that's all done, the speaker can then use the lounge area or go onto the show floor, enjoy themselves right until the point where they need to be on theatre and stage. In the meantime, once those approvals are done, those updated slide decks, any of those changes, that can be sent straight to the theatre and uploaded, so that's ready for the speaker arrival. And there's two ways you can do this. You can have that runner with a USB, hoping for a new 5K best on Strava, or there are options with AV production companies to set up networks so that theatres and speaker lounges can be connected and those updates can go instantaneously. Then when your speaker arrives at your theatre or stage, they're greeted by their room or stage manager, and then they're ready to present and everyone's happy. But things aren't always happy. And that's not the note that I necessarily wanted to transition onto this section with, but a huge part of events is handling challenges. Live events are unpredictable, but great delivery comes from being prepared and how to adapt. So speakers can run late, slides don't work, AV has a moment, sessions overrun. And the difference between a good event and a great one is really how those moments are handled. So the key thing here is to not avoid problems entirely, but it's how do you prepare to respond to them calmly and quickly. So I'd say that most challenges fall into three areas. First, you've got your speaker issues, late arrivals, last minute slide changes, speakers going over time. This is where your team really comes into play and managing expectations, adapting the flow and keeping things on track without feeling rushed. So if you've got a late arrival or a no-show, can you switch sessions around, take a later speaker and bring them earlier in the day without disappointing delegates because maybe they were in another session? So look at your different tracks. Many events that I've worked are attached with publishing houses or magazines. Can you lean on your editorial team to either bring in a friend of the brand or do something like if you get no-shows or a cancellation, I love to do an Any Answers live and bringing together a panel of friends of the brand, and get the audience to ask questions. Second of all, technical issues. Let's say something doesn't load, a video doesn't play, and a mic cuts out. This is where having a really clear run of show and strong communication with AV makes a huge difference, because everyone knows what's supposed to happen, and then those people know what to do if it doesn't. I had an issue recently where we were on site, we had 5 theatres and the entire show lost power. We had workshops happening on one stage, we had sponsors presenting on another, and it only happened for a few minutes, but we then need to make sure that obviously all of the technology is up and running again. Can the sessions continue? And also, what are the sponsors, how are the sponsors feeling? Thankfully, because it happened to everyone, they didn't mind. But then we need to adjust timings and make sure that they get the full session, that, you know, they are allocated, and just some extra time to apologise for the inconvenience. And thirdly, programming issues. So sessions overrunning, delays building up across the day, and panels that aren't quite landing. So this is where you need to make the real time decisions. So do you cut a Q&A? Do you shorten the next session? How do you adjust your schedule? But the most important thing in all of this is clarity, and that is who is making that decision, because hesitation is really what creates chaos. The best on-site teams are calm, communicative, and proactive. So whether you're on radio or using WhatsApp channels to communicate, if you're not reacting in the moment, they're already thinking one step ahead. So also lean on your room managers to make some of those decisions. For example, if you've got one session where one of your theatres is overrunning because the speakers won't get on stage, allow your room manager to take control and cut that so you can get back on track. And when all of this happens, most attendees don't actually notice that there's an issue, but we do behind the scenes. So just to note that when the plan changes, be prepared, because it will. Focus on those decisions, focus on clear decision making and who owns the call. Fast, consistent communication across your teams is vital, and make sure that you align AV content and speakers quickly. All in all, you need to make sure that you protect the audience experience, and remember to just stay calm and in control the whole time. There's a photo here with me with my AV techs for a show that I did in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and we'd been communicating with the hotel, and they knew that we were a British team, and that unfortunately as the event manager, I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. So everything was obviously communicated in English, and we had a great event manager that worked with me on that one. But sadly, once I got on site, nobody recognised that the AV technicians they sent didn't speak a lick of English, and I don't speak any Portuguese. But thankfully, events is a universal language. So when we were looking at sound levels, I'm here like looking like I'm about to land a plane, going, right, bring it up, bring it down. And it was a great day, all in all. So, you know, we can always, you'll always find a way, as long as you can keep a calm head. So thank you so much for listening. We did host a Q&A with this one, and I can recap a couple of the discussion points that we had. So first of all, Lynn Evans asked about how do we justify the cost of resourcing, because resourcing is a huge issue when it comes to live events. So how do you justify the cost of a graphics ops or extra room managers if normally they would do with this internally? And especially when it comes to budgetary constraints, I always say to bring it back to what kind of experience are you delivering. If you want to provide a top level industry, you know, sector leading experience, you need to bring in a bit of money. A lot of the time your attendees are really here attending your event because they want to engage and learn and be inspired. Second of all, you as the producer, you spend so much time speaking with these people that this is a really key point for you to build on those connections. So some of your key speakers and big brands, that's the time for you to say, hello, thank you so much for coming. But if you're too focused on what's happening in all the rooms, you never get a chance to speak to them. I've worked on so many events where I've literally seen some of my speakers for all of 20 seconds and then had to run off because I'm looking after another room. And that's not great, because you want to bring them back. And how do you develop content? So you want a chance to be able to speak to these people while they're in the room. So that's another great way of just relationship building. And also always remember to bring it back to, how is this going to affect your sponsor's experience? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to events, we can all say that we want to bring together communities. We want to educate industries. Everything with events always comes back to the bottom line, and how are we going to make money, and how are we going to impress our partners? There was another question that was around AI when it comes to on-site delivery experience, and I had a few questions in the registration form for this. And To be frank, my opinion on this is that you need to step away from your laptop and focus on your people skills. This is where you step away from the desk and you've got, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, how many other days of your event, this is the time to get in front of people and build relationships. I don't know of any AI tools that can help in this scenario, but this is about your change management and how you communicate. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you learned something today, and we'll catch you on the next Nuff Said Secrets. Thanks.